London, 1883. The fog clung to the streets like a shroud, a thick pea-soup mist that hid a multitude of sins. In the dim gaslight, the city was a place of shadows and secrets, where the line between the living and the dead was often perilously thin. In the world of medicine, a quiet revolution was happening, but it demanded a terrible price. The medical schools needed bodies, and the only supply came from the shadows, from men willing to traffic in the one thing the living could not protect, the sanctity of the grave, His name was Silas Crowe. He was not a monster by nature, but circumstance is a cruel architect of fate. A once respected stone mason, he had fallen on hard times after a serious injury left his hands too unsteady for detailed work. With a wife, Clara, slowly fading from consumption and two young mouths to feed, desperation became his constant companion. The advertisement was discreet, nailed to a board in a tavern frequented by men who asked no questions. Strong backs needed for night work, premium pay, discretion required. That is how Silas Crowe became a resurrectionist, a body snatcher, a ghoul. The diary begins not with horror, but with grim necessity. The early entries are matter-of-fact, almost clinical. He details the tools of the trade, the wooden shovels that made less noise than iron, the canvas sacks and ropes, the method of digging at the head of a fresh grave to create a narrow tunnel to the coffin, which they would break open with a crowbar to extract their prize. He wrote of the money, the sheer relief of being able to buy medicine for Clara, a joint of meat for the children, coal for the fire. The guilt was a cold stone in his belly, but he swallowed it down each night with cheap gin. He worked with a man named Ezekiel Zeke Miller, a veteran of the trade with a face like a hatchet and eyes devoid of warmth. Zeke was all business, efficiency personified. He taught Silas the tricks, how to scatter fresh soil over a replaced sod to hide their work, which churchyards had the laziest watchmen, how to tell a pauper's grave from one worth the effort. The recently bereaved rich pay for the heaviest stones, Zeke would grunt. Ain't no time to move 'em. Stick to the poor. They got no one to watch over 'em anyway. For months, the work was grim, but without incident. Silas became adept at disassociating, at thinking of the bodies as mere merchandise, parcels of clay to be delivered. He stopped looking at their faces. Then the entries change. The handwriting, once neat and measured, becomes jagged, splattered with ink blots and what looks like drops of rain, or something else. October 23rd, a long night at St. Jude's, a young woman, fever. Zeke was in a foul mood, working quickly. As we lifted her, her head lolled to the side. The moonlight caught her eyes. They were open, glassy. I told myself it was a trick of the light, the natural settling of the body, but Zeke saw me staring. He just laughed, a dry, rasping sound. Don't go getting soft on me, Crow. She ain't gonna thank you for it. But I could have sworn. I could have sworn she was looking right at me. This was the first crack. The occurrences became more frequent, more intimate. A week later, they excavated a young man, a bricklayer killed in a fall. November 2nd. The man's face was badly crushed. A terrible thing. We had him wrapped in sackcloth, ready to go when I felt a pressure on my arm. Through the cloth, I felt his hand. It was clenched tight. I pulled back, my heart hammering against my ribs. Zeke cursed me for a fool, but I saw it. The fist, clenched as if in anger. It had not been that way when we pulled him from the box. Silas began to drink more heavily. The money that once brought relief now felt tainted, bloody. Clara noticed the change in him, the way he jumped at shadows, the cold sweat that soaked his shirts even on chilly nights. He stopped speaking to her of his work, retreating into a sullen silence. The nightmares started. Vivid, terrifying dreams where he was the one in the box, listening to the scrape of the shovels above, feeling the splintering of the wood, staring up into the grim, featureless faces of the men pulling him from the earth. He would wake up screaming, clawing at the bedsheets, much to Clara's terror. The line between his waking nightmares and his reality began to blur. December 10th. We took a child tonight. A little girl, no more than 6, scarlet fever. Zeke said it was easy money, a light burden. I refused. I outright refused. He looked at me with those dead eyes and told me I'd do it, or he had to make sure my family learned exactly how I put food on their table. The little coffin was so small. As I carried her, the sack felt warm. Not with residual heat, but with a living warmth. I heard something. A faint, rhythmic sound. A heartbeat. It was coming from the sack. I nearly dropped her. Zeke swore and grabbed the bundle from me. He heard nothing. He said I was losing my mind. Perhaps I am. God, please let me be losing my mind. He was trapped. The money was the only thing keeping Clara alive, yet the work was poisoning his very soul. He tried to quit, but Zeke merely showed up at his door, smiling a thin, threatening smile, and asked after Clara's health. The message was clear. The final descent was swift and terrifying. January 17th. We were in the worst place, the pauper's field. The bodies are stacked shallow there, one on top of the other. The air smells of rot and quicklime. We were after a specific plot. A man said to have been buried with a gold wedding ring still on his finger. We found him, an old man, his face wizened and stern even in death. As Zeke pried the ring loose, the corpse's eyes snapped open. I stumbled back, crying out. Zeke didn't flinch. He just pocketed the ring. "Stop your whimpering," he snarled. "It's just the nerves." But the eyes. They followed me. They tracked my movement as I scrambled away from the grave. They were full of a cold, knowing hatred. Zeke saw nothing. The next entry is barely legible, scrawled in a frantic hand across the page. He is in the house. I don't know how. I locked the doors. I barred the windows. But I can smell the grave earth. I can hear the slow, dragging footsteps on the stairs. Clara is asleep. The children are asleep. They hear nothing. It is only for me. He is standing outside my bedroom door. I can see his shadow under the crack, the old man from the field. He is waiting. The final entry. The ink is brown, perhaps with rust or something else. The writing is a desperate, spidery scratch. They are all here. The young woman, the bricklayer, the little girl. They are lined up at the foot of my bed. Their eyes are open. They do not blink. They are not decaying. They are perfect and still, and they watch me. They have been watching me for hours. Zeke was wrong. The dead do watch over them. They watch over us all. And now they have come to collect their witness. I can hear the dirt. It sounds like rain on the roof. It is inside the room. It is falling from the ceiling, covering the floor, covering the bed. It is in my mouth. I can taste the grave. They are coming closer. They are reaching for... The entry ends there. Abruptly. The final word is unfinished. The diary was found clutched in Silas Crow's hand 3 days later. The door to his small home was locked from the inside. His wife and children were found in their beds, unharmed but deeply asleep, unable to be roused for nearly a day. They remembered nothing. Silas was on the floor of his bedroom. The doctor said his death was due to a seizure of the heart, brought on by extreme agitation and alcoholism. They noted the curious fact that his boots and the cuffs of his trousers were caked in fresh, damp, clay-like soil. There was no explanation for where it could have come from. His family, shamed and heartbroken, moved away and never spoke of him again. The diary was packed away in a trunk, forgotten for generations, until it was discovered in a dusty attic, a final testament to a man who stole from the dead and paid the ultimate price. Some say it was the guilt that drove him mad, a waking nightmare born of a tortured conscience. Others, those who have read his words and felt the chill in his frantic script, believe something else. They believe the dead have a longer memory than the living, and that some debts can only be collected in the currency of terror. This is just one story, pulled from the shadows of the past. But there are others. If you have a story of a cursed object, a haunted heirloom, something passed down in your family with a warning, tell me in the comments below. Share your story. But be careful. Some things don't like to be talked about. Subscribe if you dare to uncover more histories they buried.